please tell us about yourselves?
So we have this thing whenever we speak in public that I introduce Valerie and Valerie introduces me. So I'm going to tell you about Valerie and then she can tell you about me. So Valerie is an expert in children's literacy. She got her EDD at Teachers College of Columbia. She is also an experienced teacher, not only at the collegiate level, where she's been quite active, but also with graduate students. And she taught K through 6 prior to getting her EDD at Columbia Teachers College. Now you can read all of that on her CV, but what you can't read on her CV is that Valerie has what is called synesthesia, which is where she sees colors, she sees letters and numbers in color. And so it is by no accident that she chose literacy as her vocation.
So Mark's name is Blue, in case you didn't know, with a little bit of red. So this is Mark Lubowitz, and he earned his doctorate at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville in molecular biology, and then he did postdoctoral work at Berkeley. He also, again, not on his CV, he loves to cook. He loves to grow what he eats and what he cooks. He works that into his plant biology course. And he and his wife host a dinner for about 50 of their best friends on the 15th of every month.
For 18 years in a row.
Oh my goodness. Now, what color is your name?
My name is Mose. It's got a lot of reds and magentas, and I would say it's got a purple cast to it.
Oh, wonderful. So given your backgrounds, it's no surprise you ended up working together. Can you tell us a little bit how you met and how this relationship came to be?
Yeah, so we got hired at the same time, or the same year. And at St. Michael's College, you go through, for lack of a better word, we call it tenure camp. So it's really where they train the new faculty. And so we were a cohort, and somewhere along that way, actually, should we tell the story?
Yes.
We're going to tell the story.
Okay.
This is
wonderful.
Okay. So Valerie asked me one day to appear in one of her classes. She said,
It was a graduate course on nonfiction, and everybody in it were practicing teachers going for a master's degree or more information about nonfiction.
yeah, and so being a professor, I said, so what can I do to prepare for class? And she said, do not prepare for class, which is sort of unusual. All you need to do is come to class and play along and respond to the book that we're going to be discussing, which I hadn't read.
So it was a book called Winter Barn. It's a picture book by Peter Parnell, and it's very fitting for this area of the country. It's about a barn in winter barn, and it's very quiet, line drawings with a little bit of color, and it describes what happens inside a barn in the winter. The protagonists are a mouse, a snake, an owl. There's lots of hay. There's lots of stone walls at the base.
And so at the end of the book, at the end of the narrative, Valerie asked the class, so what was this story about? And everyone said it's about friendship, about these three that are struggling through the Vermont winter. It's cold and it's harsh. And I said, no, this is a horror story. One is a predator and two are prey. And we know how this ends. Two end up in the belly of the first. And I was the only one in the room who saw it that way. And that was why Valerie invited me to the class, because her point was the way in which we're trained, the way in which we're indoctrinated through our education absolutely changes the way in which we see the world. And so that led to this really larger conversation and how education is really good at producing expertise. And there's absolutely a place in the world for experts. But what it's not very good at is actually having experts talk to each other and work across interdisciplinary boundaries. So we decided that what we needed to do was to create an authentic experience that allowed our students to function as experts, but work across their boundaries. So we did the only rational thing that anybody would do. We built a garden.
Wonderful. So this is learning science through literature or literature through science.
Bingo.
That's right.
Wonderful.
And what I wanted to add is that because elementary teachers teach all subjects, they really need to be aware of looking at literature with different lenses, not just the literary elements, which is why I had Mark come in.
Yeah. So Books in Bloom was born from this idea.
Well, first we created a garden.
Yes.
So we have a garden on campus called Books in Bloom, and every plant in that garden is from a children's book. So, for example, Harry Potter is well represented. There's a privet hedge.
Screaming Mandrake.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lily for the ethereal mother who has passed away. There's petunia for Aunt Petunia. There are poppies for the Wizard of Oz, lupins for Miss Rumplea. So every flower in that garden, every shrub can be found in a book.
So imagine this. So if you end up in one of our courses, when our courses work together, what would happen is, so I teach plant biology. Valerie teaches children's literature. Okay, so we take our 2 classes out to the garden and we give them a kid's book, a picture book. And we actually have them read the book, and the assignment is, if you're in my class, I want you to look for the biology that is in the story. These stories aren't about biology per se, but there's some either biology that's buried in them, or biology is the literary device. If you're in Valerie's class.
So what you do when you read the book is think about those literary elements that you've been studying. So a theme, the setting, the story arc, and little details about the symbolism perhaps that the plants play.
And then, okay, so what do they do with that? So you're a biologist, you found, okay, here's some biology in this book, you're in Valerie's class, here's the literary elements. And what we ask them to do is we want them to create an authentic experience for outside visitors, so essentially for tours, right? And so we're going to bring anywhere from 5th graders on campus to parents to alumni to the public, whoever. We have different events come on campus, and they have to lead a tour of the gardens that captures the literary elements as well as the plant biology and create an experience that they could not have done on their own. So they have to apply their expertise to solve a larger problem. That's authentic. You know, you're giving a tour to the public.
So your biology students, did they enjoy receiving these picture books?
Yeah, they did. You know, it's interesting. Initially, there's sometimes some hesitation, and what I tell them is there's a lot of deep biology in there. You may not see it at first, but there really, really is.
For example, one of the books that we use is Miss Rumphius by Barbara Cooney, and we'll have them read it, and my students will kind of hammer home the point or the theme that the book offers, which is you need to make the world a better place, because that's what she is charged to do. And
How does she do it? How does she?
She does it by, finally, she arrives at the idea that she can spread lupin seeds all over Maine, and they're beautiful flowers everywhere.
So an alternative interpretation is that she's a very well-intentioned individual who's spreading exotic invasives. So there are different ways to approach that book, right? And they're both completely valid, right? But they come from different perspectives.
It's also where I learned that one of the ways that seeds are dispersed is through a tension mechanism, which makes sense in the story.
Fruit that is a catapult.
Yes, yeah. So when your literature students interact, well, your teachers interact with biology students, do you find that they're asking different questions, that they're opening their eyes up to science and math?
It's often an aha moment for them, that it's more than just the literature, that there's something that makes the story work. It's not just an add-on, it's a deeper way that biology contributes to the story.
Well, to get sort of closer to the Books in Bloom text that we're talking about today, how did you end up choosing these 17 books?
I was going to say, so out of that interaction that we just described, that's the origin for Books in Bloom, the book, because we were having our students do it, so we should do it, to expand upon it.
So one of the one of the things that was important to both of us is not all books made it to the book. Not all children's books made it to the book, because I was adamant about the literary qualities being really good. The illustrations have to be a key player, the text has to be well done, and Mark was equally adamant that there would be some aspect of plant biology that really worked in the book. So he would bring in a book because it was great about acorns, and I would say, the text is terrible.
Yeah.
And I would say, oh, let's read this one. And he would say, there's really not any biology in it.
Yeah.
So we really examine each book with both of those lenses. And every year there are more. We could keep adding, but we feel really good about sharing these particular books with everybody.
And we wanted to make sure, as we were going through them, we wanted to make sure that we captured certain biological concepts, plant biological concepts. So seed dispersal is a very common theme. But we couldn't do a whole book on just seed dispersal. So we wanted to make sure that we captured lots, what the critical concepts in plant biology are.
And similarly, we wanted to make sure that there were books of different genres, so that there's fiction, there's nonfiction, there's poetic language in some of them, so that it's a broad range, something for everyone.
Wonderful. Do you feel that this could be something, this Books in Bloom is designed for pre-K through 5, but did you find that it's applicable to other age groups? I mean, clearly your biology class
Yeah.
and
So we're doing it with our college students. We've written a book where we can do it for K through 5, and we would like to keep going, actually. We think that there is a niche for an older audience.
We've even done this with teachers, some of whom are older than I am. But the reason that it works with a broad audience is that it really gets at deeper concepts about society, about culture, about aesthetics, about science. And these can be shaped to be age appropriate. So
We can give you a very explicit example. So the Hunger Games. So not many people realize that that book is resolved based upon plant biology. So at the very end, when Katniss has got the poison berries and she's with Peeta, and they're deciding whether or not to eat the poison berries. Poison berries are really another word for secondary metabolites, and there's a whole field of plant biology that looks at secondary metabolites and why plants produce these compounds. So many people don't see it as the theme could be dystopia, or it could be resolving conflict through secondary metabolites.
there's a book that we used in a college course that we taught together about the meaning of gardens, and it's called The Earth Knows My Name, and it explores cultural connections that immigrants have to their home countries when they come here that they maintain through gardening. And so this element of culture and history and the role that plants play in that is evident, for example, in Priscilla's hollyhocks. So the concepts grow with the ages.
And it's a ubiquitous theme. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find a culture on this planet where plants are not central. Every region has a favorite plant or a plant that plays a role in their culture.
And cultural gardens, too, are becoming very popular in schools now as a way for students to express where their origins. For teachers who are looking to expand their collection of literature, do you have any recommendations? Books can often be very expensive and hard to choose.
So, can I speak for you for a second? You
Sure.
can tell me.
See what you say.
So Valerie has a very extensive bibliography, and it actually is available on our website. And even within Books in Bloom, there are those books which we chose, and then there are related texts that Valerie chose. These are books that are close in theme, are often very good, and if you don't have the book that we highlighted, you may have one of these. So within our book itself, Books in Bloom, and on our website, you can find a very extensive list of books that cover children's literature, excellent children's literature, and plant biology.
So I think it depends on your goal for your classroom library. Mark is talking about how we have a book perhaps about seed dispersal, and if you don't have that book, here are related texts. So in a way, you could just develop a text set or group of texts in your classroom library about that one concept. And what that would offer children, whether it's a classroom or a library or an after-school program, is a lot of different ways to look at seed dispersal. So it's one biological concept, but what different authors and illustrators offer are different ways to represent information. And what's powerful about that for a classroom teacher is that it sort of mentors students about how you present information. So that's one way to go. Here are 5 different takes on seed dispersal. So that would be one way to go. Another way to go would be if you only have X amount to spend on a library and you look at the next generation science standards and here are all the ones for your grade level, then you might want to have one book that represents or helps address each one. But I would definitely only choose books that are well regarded for their literary elements as well as for accuracy and excellent language and illustrations as well as the science, because then you're addressing both areas with one really good book.
Wonderful. So quality over quantity.
And accuracy.
And accuracy.
Speak accurately is one of our phrases.
There are so many wonderful lessons in here. Is there a particular favorite of yours?
We were thinking about this and thinking, it's like saying, what's your favorite child? I have a couple of favorites, and one is a fruit is a suitcase for seeds. What I love about this lesson is we ask students, after discussing and looking at the book carefully, to create their own fruit. And it's a way that they can synthesize everything in the book and then try to apply it. So we ask them to design how the seed will travel. What's the co-opting agent? Is that the right word? And what it's going to look like, how the seeds are protected, and design their own. So it's really at a higher level of application.
I love soil. And soil is sort of the unsung hero of the plant world. And it was intuitive that plants need soil, but demonstrating the importance of soil is not so easy to do. And so when we discussed in the garden with Dr. Carver, we have 2 exercises that we created about soil. One was a very easy way on how to analyze what type of soil you have. And the other is an experiment that demonstrates the importance of nutrients. So essentially, plant vitamins come from soil.
And I have another one that highlights the role of plants in the artistic world. So we chose Grandpa Green. It's very different than the others. But topiary is the medium through which this person's life is memorialized. And so I think that to create moss, you have to understand how that develops and spreads, but also to use it as an artistic medium expands thinking about what art is.
There's one that I love on language use actually, and where we talk about generic versus specific. So if I say flower, it conjures a certain image in your mind, but if I say rose, it's a very different image. Whereas if I say child versus Julie, right, it's a very different, anyway, it's very...
Words matter.
Yeah, words matter.
Yeah, words
matter.
definitely.
And specific versus generic matters. And when you know specific, it changes your relationship with that object or that organism. So rose versus flower, right?
Yeah, I think that one is that one with Jack's Garden.
Yeah.
Well, just to touch on the seasonal aspect of books. We're in fall in New England right now, which is lovely, but we are approaching a sort of cold spell for a lot of schools across our country. Are these lessons applicable in the classroom even during the winter time and early spring?
Yeah, in fact, some of the books, for example, The Gardener that we wrote about, Lydia Grace is actually a container gardener. She doesn't have an outside garden, or she has an outside garden, but it's a rooftop garden. And so living in Vermont, we were acutely aware of the limitations of what we can do seasonally. And so we tried to choose books that enable us to go year-round.
And some of them involve movement, acting things out, acting out concepts. Lydia Grace, when she's looking at how to plant her containers, we have one learning experience where you can put something like a hula hoop on the floor of a gym and ask students to be the roots and see how that space contains their movement. We also have one where we ask students to use artistic medium rather than plants and soil to show the inside of fruit. So I think that there's a range.